It's crazy, man. When you think about Jim Carrey, the guy who made the whole world laugh, the face of comedy for decades, and then you hear that somewhere along the way, after all the fame, all the success, he found something deeper, something spiritual, something in Islam that brought him peace. It makes you stop and think about what we're all chasing, right? Because here's this dude who literally had everything, the fame, the money, the respect, the legacy, and yet he was searching for something beyond the noise. And when I first heard about Jim turning towards Islam, I'll be honest, my first reaction was curiosity. I mean, I've known Jim for a long time, or at least known his work deeply. I've talked about him on the show. I've admired his courage to step away from Hollywood, from the illusion of ego. And I've always thought, this guy's on another level of awareness. But this new chapter, man, it's something else. So I started digging into what that piece really meant to him. Let's face it, we live in a world constantly screaming for attention, pulling us in 1,000 directions. And here's Jim Carrey, one of the loudest icons in entertainment, finding serenity in a path built on silence, surrender, and connection with God. That contrast, man, it's powerful. I remember watching his interviews years ago when he said, "I don't exist." People thought he'd lost his mind. But maybe already walking toward that realization, that letting go of the self, of the ego, is the only way to real peace. And Islam, from what I've read and learned through guests and friends who are Muslims, is exactly about that, surrendering your will to the Creator, aligning your life with purpose and compassion. So maybe this wasn't so unexpected after all. Maybe Jim Carrey was always looking for something real beneath the illusion of fame. I started thinking about how many people in Hollywood chase that same thing, but never find it. They chase the next role, the next deal, the next house, and it never fills that void. But Jim, man, he went the other way. He walked out of the machine, out of the noise, and found peace. Something ancient, something divine. It takes guts to do that. You have to imagine what it feels like, walking away from everything that defines you in the world's eyes and saying, "I'm not that person anymore." That's terrifying for most people, but that's what makes his story fascinating. When I look at Islam, I see a structure of life that's not about chaos or chasing desires, but about grounding yourself in something eternal. And Jim Carrey, he always struck me as a seeker, someone who could see through the illusion. I've had people on the podcast talk about mindfulness, meditation, psychedelics, consciousness, all of it. And there's always this theme of surrender. But Islam takes that idea and turns it into a complete way of life. It's not just a weekend retreat or a 10-minute meditation app. It's a full transformation. You pray 5 times a day. You remember that you're not in control, that there's something greater guiding you. I think Jim found that. And when he speaks about peace, different, because he's not just talking about feeling calm. He's talking about being aligned with purpose. You know what really gets me? The humility. A guy who once owned every stage, every camera, every laugh, and now he bows his head 5 times a day in gratitude and submission to God. That's something the ego can't handle, but the soul, it craves it. And that, man, is where the real journey begins. I can almost picture Jim sitting quietly somewhere, maybe in a simple room, no red carpet, no lights, just him and his thoughts, whispering the words of prayer, feeling that stillness that no movie set or applause could ever give him. That's what peace looks like. And the more I read and listened, the more I realize Islam isn't what many people think it is. It's not just a religion. It's a rhythm, a discipline, a reminder that we're temporary, that we're here to serve, not to dominate. And Jim Carrey, of all people, finding that message, it's poetic. Because comedy, in a strange way, is about truth. You can't make people laugh deeply without revealing something real about life. Maybe that's why Jim connected so strongly. Spent his whole career uncovering truth through laughter, and now he's uncovering truth through faith. That's full circle if you ask me. It makes you think about how often we misunderstand peace. We think peace means getting away from chaos, avoiding problems, or sitting on a beach somewhere. Peace Jim talks about now. It's internal. It's not about escaping the world. It's about being still within it. And that's a lesson a lot of us, especially in the West, forget. We're trained to chase comfort. But true peace is about surrender. I remember a guest once said on my show that the ego is the enemy of peace. And that's exactly what Islam teaches too, that the ego blinds you from God. When I heard that, I thought, man, this is what Jim's been talking about all along. He wasn't losing his mind. He was shedding it, realizing that the self we cling to is just noise. And in Islam, when you say La ilaha illallah, there is no God but God. You're basically saying there's no power, no control, no reality worth submitting to except the one who created you. That's freedom, not the fake kind. Not doing whatever you want, but the real kind. Freedom from the illusion that you're in charge. Jim found out that. You can hear it in the way he talks now. There's a softness in his words, a calm that comes only from surrender. And man, I respect that deeply. It takes someone truly brave to admit that all the success in the world couldn't fill the emptiness inside. That's not weakness. That's awakening. The more I think about it, the more I realize Jim's journey is like a mirror for all of us caught in the noise of life. Because whether you're a comedian, a fighter, a scientist, or a regular guy working 9 to 5, we're all chasing meaning in different forms. Some find it through success, some through family, some through art, and some through faith. But the truth is, most of us don't even stop long enough to ask what peace really feels like. We confuse excitement for happiness, distraction for fulfillment. I've met countless people on my show who've reached the top of their field and still feel lost. They have the house, the recognition, fans, but something's missing. And when Jim found Islam, it was like he finally located that missing piece. You could tell it wasn't about publicity or image. It was internal, sacred. I read somewhere that Jim said he felt a kind of quiet he'd never known before. Like all the noise in his head finally faded away. And I get that, man. We live in a hyper-connected world where silence is almost extinct, where you can't even walk 5 feet without a notification, a commercial, or an opinion being thrown at you. But faith, real faith, teaches you to detach. It reminds you you're not the center. You're a part of something infinite. That's what Islam does. It centers you on purpose. I've had conversations with Muslims who told me how every action, from eating to sleeping to working, becomes an act of worship when done with the right intention. That's powerful, man. Imagine living your whole life with that kind of awareness. No autopilot, no drifting, just conscious connection to your creator every single moment. And for Jim, that probably felt like home after years of pretending to be other people on screen. Acting is amazing, but it's also exhausting because you're constantly stepping out of yourself. For him to step into faith, to step into something real, that's like breathing for the first time. It reminds me that enlightenment isn't about adding something to your life. It's about removing everything that isn't true. And Islam at its core is truth. It's aligning your life with what's real. The world today sells illusions, filters, fame, ego. But faith strips all of that away. And Jim saw that clearly. You look at his art now, and it's different, softer, more reflective. His paintings used to scream pain and confusion. Now they speak of surrender and peace. That's not just artistic evolution. That's a soul transformation. And I can't help but respect that, because change like that doesn't happen overnight. It's not PR, it's rebirth. I've said this before on the podcast. Real growth happens when you face yourself, when you sit in silence and ask, who am I without the world's applause? And that's exactly what Jim did. The more I think about it, the more it blows my mind how many great minds, people like Muhammad Ali, Cat Stevens, Dave Chappelle, found peace in Islam. It's not about fame. It's about truth. There's something timeless about that message of surrender. It humbles the proud, lifts the broken, unites people beyond race or class. And maybe that's what drew Jim in, the universality of it. You don't have to be born into it. You can choose it. It's not exclusive. It's an invitation. I imagine Jim reading the Quran quietly at night, coming across verses about mercy, justice, and balance, and realizing this is what I've been searching for. At the end of the day, all philosophies point toward one reality. Peace comes from alignment with truth, and that truth is God. I've met a lot of spiritual people. They talk about energy, vibration, the universe. But Islam gives that energy a name, a structure, a direction. It's not just good vibes, it's guidance. It's something you live by, not just think about. And Jim, man, he's living it. That's the difference. You can talk about peace all day long, but when you see someone actually living it, it hits different. That's why people are drawn to his story, not because it's shocking, but because it's real. It's rare to see a celebrity choose silence over spotlight. And when he talks now, he doesn't sound like the comedian chasing the next laugh. He sounds like a man who's finally comfortable with himself. That's rare in any field. But in Hollywood, that's a miracle. You know what else strikes me? The timing the world's been in chaos these past few years? Division, anxiety, loss, and right in the middle of it all, Jim Carrey chooses peace through Islam. That's symbolic, man. The universe reminding us that truth never goes out of style. No matter how loud the world gets, faith is still the anchor. And when someone like Jim finds it, notice, it's almost like he's continuing his role as an entertainer, but on a higher level, entertaining souls now instead of crowds, showing us that the real performance isn't on screen. It's how you live your life when no one's watching. That's the beauty of faith. It's intimate, you and the divine, no audience, no critics, just sincerity. And I think about how many people are probably inspired by his journey right now, people who've been searching for meaning but didn't know where to look. Maybe seeing Jim Carrey find peace in Islam makes them curious enough to explore it too. That's the ripple effect. One man's awakening can ignite 1,000 more. That's power, a reminder that no matter who you are or what you've done, peace is available. You just have to be brave enough to seek it.